You're about to listen to a BBC podcast, and I'd like to tell you a bit about the podcasts I work on. I'm Dan Clark, and I commission factual podcasts at the BBC. It's a massive area, but I'd sum it up as stories to help us make sense of the forces shaping the world. What podcasting does is give us the space and the time to take brilliant BBC journalism and tell amazing, compelling stories that really get behind the headlines. And what I get really excited about is when we find a way of drawing you into a subject you might not even have thought you were interested in. Whether it's investigations, science, tech, politics, culture, true crime, the environment, you can always discover more with a podcast on BBC Sounds.
BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. All the news, insight and analysis you need delivered in less time than it takes to break a New Year's resolution. It's Wednesday the 3rd of January. I'm Jane Lewis, and coming up today...
Greg Taylor has a great finish and a terrific goal for Celtic.
As Celtic restore their 8-point lead going into the winter break, can the champions be caught? At the other end...
The game is done and dusted in Dingwall. It's Ross County 0, Aberdeen 3. Oh, a goal, lads! 6 in a row for the main man!
How much trouble are Ross County in, and are Livingston doomed? And...
the talent is definitely there, but I think it's time to start really kicking on now.
we get the lowdown on Rangers' new boy, Fabio Silva.
This is the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
Well, Tom English is BBC Scotland's chief sports writer. Tom, Happy New Year to you. Any New Year's resolutions attempted, broken? Where are we with them?
No, I just, Jane, my New Year's resolution is to maintain my loving and admiring relationship with all my Twitter followers who hang on my every word, Jane, as you know.
So broken already then.
Well, I'd say it broke. It was never established to begin with. So, no, I don't believe in New Year's resolutions. I live a perfect life, Jane. What's the point of resolutions?
Indeed. I'm not even sure why we went down that road, to be honest with you. Well, plenty to get through with Tom, and we'll also be joined by the Portuguese football expert, Aaron Barton. But first of all, let's quickly run through today's Scottish football headlines. Celtic are 8 points clear at the top of the Premiership going into the winter break. They scored twice in the opening 6 minutes on their way to a 3-0 win over 10-man St Mirren in Paisley. Rangers sit second with 2 games in hand after beating Kilmarnock 3-1 at Ibrox. Bottom club Livingston's winless run extended to 13 games with a 2-1 home defeat by Hearts. Aberdeen moved up to 8th with a 3-0 away win at Ross County, while Hibs and Motherwell drew 2-2 at Easter Road. And in the Championship, Dundee United remain 3 points behind Raith Rovers with a game in hand after both sides won away from home at Arbroath and Dunfermline respectively. Well, let's start with the top of the Premiership, Tom. 4 wins in a row now for Celtic. They looked very comfortable yesterday. I was at the game, actually, and despite the fact that St Mirren were reduced to 10 men, the win never looked in doubt. It was very easy for them.
Yeah, it was, Jane. They got out of the traps very, very early, and that's a hugely pleasing win for Brendan Rodgers because, as we all know, things were getting a little bit nervy for Celtic after those defeats against Kilmarnock and Hearts. The Old Firm game was huge for them. It was absolutely massive for them. So they've won that, and now they've beaten St Mirren, which is potential banana skin for them. And they're looking good going into the new year. The winter break now coming up. I think that by the sounds of Brendan Rodgers, who's been suffering with flu, a number of them have various ailments. Sounds like they're panting and wheezing into this winter break. Sounds like they desperately need a rest and a bit of recuperation. But they're going into it feeling very good about themselves.
What do you think's changed for them in recent weeks? How significant was that Old Firm win, do you think?
Oh, massive. I think, look, the big game mentality came out for Celtic against Rangers. This was a kind of, I'm not saying must-win game, but it kind of was a must-win game because the consequences of losing against Rangers would have been huge, that the fans would have gone potty as they did in the defeat against Hearts. So having won that, it just calms everybody down. The players, the fans in particular. And it's a reminder as well that, they have a decent squad, Celtic. You know, Nawrocki comes back in. Everyone's written him off. He comes off the bench, and now people are going, hang on a second, maybe this guy does have a future at Celtic. Hatate comes back against St Mirren. Abada is back in. You know, so there's a number. There's those two guys, Hatate and Abada. We haven't seen much of them at all this season. They are. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's true. They are like new players. And we look across the city and Rangers having to sign players to try and keep pace with Celtic. Celtic have already got two kind of new, in inverted commas, players at the club already in Hatate and Abada, tried and tested, proven players at this level. So it's, you know, things are looking good. I think they have ridden through the mini storm and are looking strong again.
I spoke to the St Mirren manager, Stephen Robinson, after the game. As you can imagine, he was pretty downbeat. You kind of sense that he's looking forward to his break so they can kind of hit the reset button a bit, because they have had a bit of a stuttering time of it, haven't they?
Yeah, they have, yeah. I mean, the lost 3 of their last 4. They're down to 5th in the table. Look, if it offered Stephen Robinson at the start of the season, look, by halfway you're going to be 5th, he'd have said, yes, please. You know, so they've done a lot of good work to this point. They're still a decent side. They're still in a very good position. They just need to, as you said, to galvanise themselves a bit now and get going again after the winter break. But, you know, it's been the performance above expectation, I would say. Maybe St Mirren fans wouldn't agree with that. Maybe they would. But I would say 5th after 22 games. I know they've played 22 and Hibs have just behind them have only played 20 and Dundee have only played 18. But still, I think St Mirren have had a very strong first half of the season.
It was a potentially tricky fixture for Rangers, wasn't it? But they came through fairly comfortably. I think it's fair to say 3-1 at home to Kilmarnock. Your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, it was a tricky one. Again, Derek McInnes is doing a terrific job with Kilmarnock. And I think anybody, Rangers and Celtic, both of them would feel a little bit apprehensive about playing McInnes' team at the moment, given what they've done already this season. So that was a good win for Rangers. And it was a kind of test of their mettle as well. I know they're at home and they have that advantage, but they're up against a side that have done a bit of damage to the top 2 this season already. They're going into it on the back of an Old Firm loss, and they responded very well to that, I thought. You know, scored some good goals. And again, I think, you know, I don't think there's any, even though they've lost the Old Firm derby, and that will be a big blow to them, I don't think Rangers have any cause to feel down at the moment. I think they're in a, certainly, again, talking about St Mirren, I think Rangers are in a much better spot than they probably thought they were going to be once the Beale debacle was playing out.
Let's quickly move on to Hearts. They're now 5 points clear of Kilmarnock with a game in hand. They're looking pretty good for that third spot again, aren't they?
They're looking pretty strong, yeah. And again, fair play to Stephen Naismith. You know, he has spent a lot of this season under the cosh from his own supporters. And you know, on our Saturday programs, Jane, as you know, we have fans' voices coming on, and every time a Hearts fan comes on, pretty much it's to call for Stephen Naismith's head. So he's had some very good weeks. Lawrence Shankland is his knight in shining armour. Can't stop scoring. Brilliant array of goals. There's variety of goals. This guy's an extraordinary goal scorer. So it's good. It's good times for Hearts. In fairness to them, you'd expect them to beat Livingston. It was possibly a little bit hairier than they thought, but they got the job done and they move on. And again, that's another team that's feeling pretty good about themselves going into the winter break.
Well, you mentioned Livingston there. Let's turn our attention to the other end of the table. Dundee's game with St Johnstone, of course, was called off due to a waterlogged pitch, but yet another defeat for Livy.
It's a kind of recurring theme now and has been pretty much all season, isn't it? There's nothing, Jane, that I have seen in Livingston for months now that tells me that they have it within them to stay up. Unless, like, the club is in chaos, the ownership of the club is in chaos. It seems a kind of knotted, complicated operation behind the scenes. I'm not sure that's helping David Martindale trying to get a tune out of his players, who he's done he's pleaded with them, he's cajoled them, he's battered them, he's tried to inspire them, he's done everything he can. He doesn't have the financial capacity to bring in much better players. So Martindale has done an exceptional job in keeping Livingston in this league for as long as he's done, and he's kept them in the league comfortably, more often than not. I think the chickens are coming home to roost with Livingston. I just cannot see, unless there's a cavalry coming in January, how they're going to save themselves.
Yeah, there's 6 points adrift at the bottom of the table going into the winter break. Let's talk about Hibs against Motherwell. Another building on Motherwell's win last time out against the aforementioned Livingston, an away point against Hibs. Although they almost got that victory, they'll be maybe disappointed, but the bigger picture is they've started the year not with a defeat, which will be a boost for them.
Yeah, look, scored a few goals. Everything seems a little bit brighter there. They're up to 9th. They're obviously still in terrible danger because they've played in 21 games, and St Johnstone below them have only played 20, and Ross County have played 19, who are below them again. So it's still a kind of perilous state that they're in, but it's slightly better than it has been. And that was a sickener for them yesterday. But you can see in the Motherwell players that there's fight in them, that they are playing for their manager, they're fighting for their manager, and that's going to be a very interesting situation. If as I think Livingston are kind of doomed, that battle for 11th, that's going to be a pretty intense battle, because there's a number. It's not just Ross County who are in it. There's a number of clubs in it, and Dundee I say it's crazy. We spent most of the season praising Dundee. Dundee aren't, they're only 4 points behind Ross County, albeit they've played one game less than Ross County. They're not a million miles out of it themselves. The league is bonkers, as we know.
That's why we love it.
You're listening to the Scottish Football Podcast.
Well, finally, the January transfer window has only just swung open, but already Premiership clubs have started to do some business. Livingston have signed the Ipswich striker Tete Yengi. St Johnstone have brought in Benjamin Kimpioki from Ike, and Kerr Smith on loan from Aston Villa, while Burnley loanee Dara Costello has left McDermott Park for Dundee, who've also lost the impressive Owen Beck. He's returned to his parent side, Liverpool. I sense that could be a big loss for them. But the move that's got a lot of attention so far has been Fabio Silva's loan move from Wolves to Ibrox. The 21-year-old cost the Midlands club £35 million 3 years ago, and he's attracted a fair degree of hype, but also probably fair to say he's a bit of an enigma as well. So what can Rangers fans expect from him over the coming months? Well, here to tell us much more about him is Aaron Barton, who's the editor of Portuguese football site Proxima Jornada. Aaron, what kind of player are Rangers getting in Fabio Silva?
They're getting an exciting player. They're getting a player who is, I think, looking to get his career back on track. He's a player who plays when he's got confidence, which I think is fair to say over the last couple of years he hasn't had much of. Last season was a big improvement, a huge improvement. He went out on loan to Belgium, to Anderlecht first, was playing really well. He was recalled from that loan to give him the opportunity to play at a higher level. He was thus loaned out to PSV in Holland. Had to kind of get his way into the team because they have Luke de Jong, who was playing as the number 9. But I think that was a really important period in his career because he was playing on the left, which is something almost as a left winger. I think if you look at his touch map when he was in Holland, he was having to do a lot more sort of running down the flanks, cutting inside with the ball, and playing other players into play, as well as looking to get himself into the box to score goals as well. So I think just in terms of his development, that will have been, something that another sort of string to add to his bow. He's someone who can hold the ball up well. His link-up play is good. He has shown at sort of various youth levels that he's someone that can score goals. he goes away on international duty with Portugal under 21, and whenever he goes away, he's banging them in or he's providing assists, and obviously that jump up from youth football to senior is what can catch out a lot of players. So I definitely think it's too early for people to, people writing him off, and you think, because he's been around the game for so long, which is so strange to say, he's 21. That first season when he was at Wolves, he was never expected to play as many minutes as he did, but obviously that horrific injury to Raul Jimenez, and then an 18-year-old boy was thrust into, what people call the biggest, most physical, fastest league in the world. And, I thought he held his own. His numbers, when you look at his numbers when he was there, that season especially, I think 4 goals and 3 assists. I knew he started 18 games, but yeah, he was playing far too much football. I think well over 1,000 minutes. And I just think it's time for a fresh start. And if he kicks on at Rangers, then maybe that can be it for him.
Aaron, what was it about him that made Wolves spend such it was a record transfer fee for Wolves, wasn't it, in the first place? What did they think they were getting?
Well, I think they were paying for potential, and I think they were I think, trying to be smart. And you might think, looking back now, 35 million for an 18-year-old isn't very smart, but they're probably thinking the hype around him, his performances when he was coming on in the cup competitions for Porto especially. He was aggressive. He'd come on, he'd get on the ball. He was making clever runs. Because when you look at the actual numbers and you think, well, he only scored 1 goal in the Portuguese top flight in the Primeira Liga before he made this transfer. So it's certainly not, what he was putting the ball in the back of the net, because it wasn't that. It was more so, I think you could just see even from his cameo appearances that, yeah, he's got a bit of something, and yeah, they've taken a bit of a punt on him. I think he was Porto's youngest player to appear in European competitions. He was the youngest scorer when he scored in the Taça de Portugal, the cup competition. And yeah, I think it was this sort of idea is that if he stays at Porto for another year, really gets into that first team and kicks on, then the transfer fee might double, might triple. We've looked, Gonzalo Ramos went to PSG recently for a lot of money. Enzo Fernandez, obviously Argentine, but he was at Benfica for 6 months, and his transfer fee went from around 50 million to 100. So I think maybe there was that sort of, we've got this money that we're able to part with, and let's take a punt on someone who could be the next wonder kid. But the deal was something that I think maybe hung over him a little bit, the expectation. But the talent is definitely there. I don't think the talent has ever really been a question for me anyway. I was a fan of him, still a fan of him, but I think it's time to start really kicking on now.
Aaron, while we've got you, obviously Scottish football has another Portuguese player, Paulo Bernardo. He seems to have really come onto a game. How big a talent is he? He, of course, plays for Celtic.
Yeah, he's another one. He's quality. I think Celtic are really liking this Benfica Portuguese youth pipeline. Obviously, they had Jota first, which was a huge success. But as for Paulo Bernardo, I think especially recently in the last few weeks when he's came into the team and he's came into his own. And I watched the game yesterday, and his assist, I think, was for the Taylor goal was magnificent. I think that's in a nutshell. You're getting this player that can play deeper in midfield, that can play passes, that can play through the lines. He can get in and around the box and play those sorts of clever passes. He's showing that he's got an eye for goal. Obviously, scoring in the Old Firm was absolutely massive. I think at that point it was 2-2. He scored the week before. So again, for him, I think it's a bit more clear in terms of the situation at the end of the season. If he's not going to return to Benfica, then I think Celtic reportedly have a fee that they can pay to trigger that move permanently. But I think if he can keep up these performances, I think Celtic fans are really starting to take to him, which is great for him, because it was looking like it might have been just a simple loan and then go back to Benfica, but a lot of competition in a lot of places, and if he's playing well and he's feeling good in himself, it might be another situation like Jota where, well, no, actually I want to stay here in a competitive team, a team that it's playing in European football, and try and kick on that way.
Well, time to wrap things up on the Scottish Football Podcast. My thanks to Tom English and Aaron Barton there. And thank you very much for listening. Keep your emails on any subject at all coming in to scottishfootball@bbc.co.uk. We'll have a series of mid-season report cards on each of the Premiership clubs coming out every weekday during the winter break. So if you haven't already done so, then please subscribe and follow the Scottish Football Podcast so you don't miss an episode. They should make very interesting listening indeed. Thanks again for your company. Goodbye.
Just a quick word to say the Scotland Rugby Podcast is now available every Tuesday. Join me, Andy Burke and Tom English for everything you need to know about the world of Scottish rugby. Just head to BBC Sounds and subscribe to the Scotland Rugby Podcast.